Hello everyone, it's Lindsay and I'm back for another Tip Tuesday. I've had a lot of questions in the comments about color and how I pick sets of colors to use in my projects, in my Bible journaling, and how I make those decisions, how I decide what colors to use. So I thought I'd jump on here and give you some tips for how I do that and what it looks like behind the scenes. So here are just some things that I was playing around with and putting together. I don't have any formal art training at all. It's just lots of school of YouTube, watching other artists on YouTube and things like that. But I also have some tips that are outside of the technical color theory to show you. So I would recommend picking up one of these color wheels. I know since kindergarten we've learned, red, yellow, and blue, and how yellow and blue make green, red and yellow make orange, that basic kind of thing there. But this is a little more in-depth than that, and it's actually very simple to use. There's some wonderful videos out there that really in-depth explain how to use this. So I'm going to go link those down below so you can check that out, because that's not my expertise. But I will briefly show you how to use this in just a minute. I don't want you to get overwhelmed with color theory and that whole process. There's some simpler ways to pick colors and decide on colors. So just by looking at the products that you have in your stash is one very easy way. I have here some stickers from Creative Retreat Kits. They are awesome for giving you colors to use. They have a variety of colors each month that I wouldn't necessarily pair together, like this green and the mint and the orange and the pink. That's not something I would just instinctually reach for, but now it's already set up and it kind of inspires what colors I'm going to be using in the entries as I'm using these products. As I've been playing around with color theory, I would know that I wouldn't want to ink smush with my paints with green and pink. These are going to mix and make a weird color, but I could play around with the light pink, this darker pink, and the orange, and use that for a background, and then use the greens for elements that I use on top of the page. And so a lot of that's just from experimenting and playing around and just kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't work. There is technically a formula, but instead of memorizing how all that is and reaching for that color wheel all the time, it's just a matter of kind of looking at the products and seeing what colors are in those. Another thing I like to use are pattern papers. And these are a couple of my favorites from Hobby Lobby, and just seeing what colors they have in there and how they're pairing them together and matching them together, and kind of being inspired by the colors in a paper pad like this. And they've already kind of done the hard work for you. So here's another one from Hobby Lobby. Just some colors that I wouldn't necessarily reach for or know that they go together, but look great in the paper pad, so then I can kind of use that as inspiration when I go to create a page. And I wouldn't even necessarily have to use paper from this pad. I would just use it as inspiration for the colors if I wanted to. So there is some ideas with products. Another thing I do is just looking at the paints in my container. So I have a couple different containers of paint. This one is primarily colors from the Target line of acrylic paints, and then a couple of my favorite Martha Stewart paints. And sometimes I'll just walk over and kind of see how things are laying next to each other and pick colors based off of that. So, and that seems really, really random, but sometimes there's just combinations that will catch your eye that you wouldn't just think of on your own, like this navy and the gray and the pink and the mustard. That would be a fun one to play with. I try not to use more than 4 colors. 4 is quite a bit. I usually stick to like 2 or 3 colors. 4, you're getting a little busy on a small Bible page. So I just try to pick just a few colors, especially since some of us are working on Gratitude Documented, and there are a lot of colors in the Gratitude Documented line, and so I wouldn't necessarily use all the colors at once. I would just pick 2 or 3, at most 4 colors to work with at a time, and that kind of helps me when creating a page. Another thing I do is hop on Pinterest, and this can be a time sink, I know, but I have a board. It's a public board on my Pinterest. I'll have it linked down below. You can check it out. And I'll just occasionally pin pictures of color combinations that I like or am inspired by, put it on this board, and then if I'm going to head into a project and I don't already have colors picked out, I can just go through here and kind of see what jumps out at me with that particular project or that particular day and use those as inspiration. I have a bunch of different distress ink combinations because I like to use distressed inks, and I don't always know, there's so many colors, I don't always know which ones work well together, and other people have already tried it out. So I'll hop on here and kind of use this for inspiration. Be careful when you start doing this, you may end up with a lot of wedding suggested pins because there's a lot of different wedding color palette suggestions, so just heads up. But there's a lot of fun ways to just see different color combinations, and sometimes it's just photos, and that will catch my eye. Scrolling through Instagram, I'll take a screenshot of something that I see and like the color combinations and save that and use that as inspiration. So this is just, they've already done the work for you. So then you can go through and see what colors kind of look nice together and use that for your project. Okay, color theory. I said I would link some videos down below with some people who have done this thoroughly and way better than I could ever do. But I did go ahead and play around with some of my paints to show you some of my go-to combinations and some different things you can do with different colors. So typically colors that are next to each other on a color wheel work well blending together. So purples and blues work well with each other, or like pinks, purples, and blues work well together because they're next to each other. Yellow, red, and orange works well because they are next to each other. So that, if you're looking at doing like the ink smushing technique that I do, or a watercolor background, and you want the colors to work well together, you're gonna wanna pick colors that are next to each other. So here's an example of the pink, purple, and blue, and you can see they blend together. I'm not getting any browns and muddiness in this because these are colors next to each other. Yellow, orange, and red, these blend well together, and as they blend, they're creating more versions of these three colors, and so I don't get brown. The yellow, blue, and green, those are next to each other, and so they're gonna blend well together. So these are kind of my three go-tos for a background, and then I just pick varying like versions of those colors. So, you know, like a deep red, a deep purple, and a deep blue, or a light pink, a light purple, and a light blue, and then mix those to have different versions of these three combinations. Now, colors that are opposite of each other on the color wheel create mud, and that's usually a bad thing if you're creating a background. But if you have a paint palette that doesn't have these earthier colors, don't have browns and grays and blacks and things like that, you can mix the colors within that palette to get those colors. So the Prima sets are kind of my favorite paints right now. This is three different Prima sets that I have in this tin here. And a couple of them don't come with some of those earthier colors. These colors up here primarily come in the Decadent Pies set. The Pastel Dreams does come with one brown, and so I may want to create more of those colors that I don't have in my palette. And so colors that are opposite of each other, purple and yellow are opposite of each other, they're gonna create brown. So you can see I mixed the purple and yellow, and it starts to get muddy in the center. I just, on a palette, mixed purple and yellow, and it got this brown color. Red and green, your Christmas colors. These work well because the red pops off of the green, but if you mix the red and green, you get brown. One way that I like to make grays for shadowing and deepening up areas of something that I'm painting is, I know based off my palette that if I mix this blue, this deeper purple, and this orange shade, I get a really nice gray color. And that's just, you know, kind of experimenting. Purple and orange are kind of opposite of each other on the color wheel, and then just by adding a few other colors, I can adjust that into the specific tone that I want. And so if you're wanting something to pop off the page, like something like this where I mix the mint and this coral color, these colors wouldn't mix well together if I was to paint with them, but they pop off of each other because they're opposite of each other on the color wheel. So if you put a yellow element on top of purple, that yellow is gonna pop, and vice versa. So just really quickly, again, go check out those videos that I'll link down below, and they kind of go in depth into how the color wheel works. But don't feel overwhelmed and feel like you need to understand how that all works. Sometimes it's just go with your instinct, look at your color palette, and kind of grab what you think looks good, and then use this just as a backup to make sure the colors that you're using aren't going to create mud if you're going to create a blended background or something like that. And just get out there and experiment. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave those down in the comments down below. Also leave suggestions for future Tip Tuesdays. I'm starting to run out of some ideas or knowing what you guys are going to want to see, so leave some suggestions down there. Give this video a thumbs up if you were inspired. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.